Your relationship with money matters. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is the Money and You podcast, where I will be breaking down your relationship with money, offering tough love money tips, and a money dating plan that will focus on lifting the barriers to success to help pave the way for better money practices and increased wealth. It's time to take control to live a limit-free life. It starts today. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Money and You, the show where we talk a great deal about all the ins and outs of your relationship with money. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host, and we're bringing you this show from ubngo.com and the Limit Free Life Company, my coaching and consulting company. So today I'm going to skip all of what I normally do before we get into our guest discussion because I'm too anxious to get to our fabulous guest. So we're going to dive right in. I'm going to read his bio, and we're going to start talking to Mike Marriner, who is the president and co-founder of one of my favorite organizations, Roadtrip Nation. So here we go. As co-founder and president of Roadtrip Nation, Mike Marriner leads the organization's media and education efforts that empower people from all backgrounds to define their own roads in life. For over 15 years, Mike has developed a range of media and education partnerships that distribute Roadtrip Nation content to over 60 million households, 14 million students, and over 12,000 schools each year. Roadtrip Nation has been awarded the Excellence in Programming Award by American Public Television, 2 Telly Awards, and won the 2019 Lone Star Regional Emmy Award for the film Room to Grow. Mike has co-authored all 4 Roadtrip Nation books, including Roadmap, printed by Chronicle Books, which hit the New York Times bestseller list in 2018. Mike is also an Ashoka Fellow, a network of leading social entrepreneurs, and has been featured in prominent news outlets, including the NBC Today Show, CBS Early Show, BBC News, Outside, Fast Company, Forbes, Esquire, USA Today, and many others. He graduated from Pepperdine University with a double major in biology and sports medicine, and attended the Harvard Business School Social Enterprise Program in 2012. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks. Excited to be here.
I'm super excited to have you here. I discovered Roadtrip Nation when my son brought home a whole pile of material in 12th grade from his college counselor, and his college counselor had wanted him to read it. He wasn't about to read any of it, and so I did. And I discovered Roadtrip Nation, and I immediately started watching the documentaries, and frankly, just fell in love. It was like, if I could have done this, I would have done it. It was such a fabulous, fabulous idea. So can you tell us just a little bit about what it is and how you, I'm fascinated actually by your story, because you did get a degree in biology and sports medicine, and here you are today. So maybe you can share with us how that happened.
Yeah, it's been a wild journey. Not linear, that's for sure. And I'm sure a lot of the stuff that you talk about too, definitely applied in my own personal journey. And yeah, Roadtrip Nation has gone through so many different chapters. Today it's a national organization that's really one part media company, one part education company. To the media side of our work, we launch road trips every year. We have a fleet of 7 motorhomes that hit the road all across America to interview people in different careers and learn how they got to where they are today. All the content and the video content from those road trips is distributed in all the different places where media is found. We have an annual documentary series on PBS. We have content on YouTube Learning. We have content on our website, roadtripnation.com, books, all that stuff that all serves to empower people to define their own roads in life. And then we have a number of partnerships with schools, campuses, guidance counselors, big education nonprofits like the College Board, Navient, Avid, and many others, whereby we embed our content into these third-party educational platforms to make sure that, wherever students can get content that helps them think about their futures, that they have something that's authentic and rich and something a little bit more human-centered than a lot of the traditional career guidance content that's out there. So that's the education side of what we do. So
yeah, and it's fabulous. I mean, it's so educational, but it's also so inspiring to me and empowering. I mean, you listen to it, I've been listening to the book on Audible. I listen to the podcasts, I watch the documentaries, and you just come away every time inspired with new ideas, new hope. It's so fabulous that way, because so much career advice, in my opinion, especially looking back, through my life. It might have been a little worse back when I was graduating, but still not great. It's fairly negative, I think, overall, and does try to scare you into a career choice in a lot of cases. And yours does the exact opposite, which I love.
Yeah, the world is so different now. There's so many more opportunities that people can take when they think about their futures. And I remember we interviewed Sir Ken Robinson on a road trip many years back in the early days of Roadtrip Nation. He's the big education thought leader. And he said, I'll never forget, he said, Mike, the world of education is kind of like the world of television. When I grew up in England, there were 4 TV channels you could watch for TV. It was, and even, it used to be that way in America too. Fox, NBC, ABC, NBC, whatever. But he said, now we have cable and we have the internet. And there are tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands. And he said the same is true with career pathways. There used to be a very limited number of career pathways you could take for your future. The mailman, postman, firefighter, and all of those are still really, really important careers. People are passionate about those careers and live, and we need those careers. And in addition to that, the world's exploded with different things you can do with your future. But a lot of the traditional career guidance tools and programs, especially in schools, are still operating as if it's a 1950s style career landscape, and it's just not. There's not the 14 career pathways anymore. There's 1,400. And so we're trying to change the mindset in terms of how young people, and not just young people, I mean, now the average Gen Z will have 12 different careers, and so it's not the days of finding your career when you're 18 years old and having sticking to it forever is gone. I mean, of course, for some pathways, but by and large, people will having to be reinventing themselves throughout their entire life. So things like learning how to learn and getting the skills you need, and finding things that really interest you and things that you love, throughout your life. But yeah, it's a big mindset shift, I mean, just like it's happening that way in every part of the world, and every healthcare, everything. But the world of careers is no different. So just a lot more options, but just trying to help the systems keep up that prepare people for careers.
Right.
That's what we do.
And I love your sort of open-minded kind of approach, where you basically, I wanted to say you design your career, but you have a different term for it in the book. I think it was, is it self-construction? What am I getting that right? There was a great term where you let go and then you define. What was it?
Yeah, let go, define, become.
Yeah.
Let go starts with really the first part of what we call shedding the noise. So, anyone has some preconceived notion around them in terms of whether you're growing up and someone said, you're a woman, you shouldn't go into science. Science is for men. Or whether you should go into science. This is the only thing you can do. Go into science, be a doctor, but everyone's got some degree of noise that they need to shed. So and that's really hard. There's a lot of stigmas around the workforce in terms of who certain professions are for. That's a lot of our work now, is really trying to drive more storytelling that paints a more inclusive view of the future of work across all professions, so that no matter what background you come from, you feel that there's a place for you in the future of work. That's a lot of what we feel storytelling can be of highest and best use for. So that's the first part, is the let go. And then define is really looking at it based on your interests, and trying to define something that's based on your interests.
Yeah. And well, back to you and how, I mean, obviously did you get that degree in biology and sports medicine for a particular purpose?
I had a great educational experience, college experience. I was a natural science majoring in biology and sports medicine. And, I'd say that just like most college students, you're pretty limited in what you've seen in the world in terms of what pathways are out there. And so I thought, I always liked solving problems. And so I thought, major in that. And actually the best thing about that was that it really taught me how to think and how to solve problems. And I always say, like, I think that my natural science degrees prepared me perfectly for starting Roadtrip Nation, because in many cases there was no major in social entrepreneurship back then, and I, that's really my passion today, is building organizations that do social good. And, I had a minor in business as well. And it was kind of like, I wanted to do good, something in the sciences, healthcare, but I also loved the idea of like organizations and building things. And I just didn't really quite know how to bring those together. But, you know, in so many ways, like you don't need to have a linear connection between what you study in school and what you go and do. Like there's all sorts of nonlinear ways they relate. So, but certainly, you know, that's what prompted our idea for that first road trip as we were graduating from school, and we kind of questioned, is this really the path we want to take? You know, I had an internship at Amgen, this big biotech company out in Thousand Oaks, and I spent the summer pipetting Chinese hamster ovary cells. And
Wow.
I don't have a great attention span, you know, like most entrepreneurs, like there can be a little sporadic, low attention span, but like pretty high energy, and whatever I dive into, I dive in really deep with. And it just turns out that like being an entrepreneur is like actually perfect for that type of, you know, mental fragmentation. But you know, science and working in a laboratory is not. And so that, and my two co-founders, Nathan and Brian, were in kind of similar areas. You know, they had been in their college majors trying to find really direct ways of applying that in their careers, and just were just hitting the wall in terms of like real emotional engagement. So we thought, you know, how can we really find our roads in life if we've never seen anything else or talked to anyone else? And so we thought, hey, before we make some of these big life decisions, let's get an old motorhome, fix it up and live in it, and go across America and interview people in careers from all walks of life and just ask them, how did they get to where they are today? Where were they when they were our age? What were the insights they gained along the way? And, you know, and then maybe after doing that road trip, we might be able to better make a decision based on our own journey. But it just so happened that after doing that road trip became our life's work and became our journey. So it's just kind of funny how it all worked out, you know, but
I love it. I love stories like that. I can't get enough of them. So, because it is interesting how things work out. And I think part of the problem with school is, like you say, you're too young and you don't have people around you who can help you see interesting ways to, you know, really execute on whatever it is that you're studying. So it's all, you know, there are just a few routes. And then you get out in the world and you get 20 years in and you see people doing really fascinating things in all these fields, and none of it was ever mentioned before. You know, you never knew about it. So you do have to take those journeys. And that's one thing I really love about your book, is just encouraging people to just try, you know, to just start exploring by doing and seeing what happens. And I really do. I have come to believe over the years of coaching people and everything else that, and they don't always love hearing that, you know, you're going to have to just step out and start trying some things and see. It might work out, it might not. There's no guarantee. You don't know how long things are going to take. So any thoughts on that? What would your advice be in that realm?
Yeah, I think just following things you're interested in. I mean, that's kind of like part of the way the world is today. There's so many you know, the good thing about the world today is there's so many paths you can take. The tough part is that there's just like, there's so many paths you can take. Exactly. So how do you decide? And so the good thing is that whereas maybe in previous generations you couldn't really follow your interests as much because there were just limited paths, you might decide just to choose one thing. But today you can really find something you're interested in, try to align it, you know, and you know, you have to, it's not as simple as that. You need to find a way to drive income and drive revenue and fuel your life and all that stuff. But you know, we believe that if you follow something you're interested in, you'll be better at it. You'll commit to it. You know, and it can be something as weird as a road trip, you know, like we were really engaged in our road trip project and we really believed in it, you know, and it can be something, and we turned it into a company, you know, and we're still doing it 19 years later. And it's this whole big national thing with 85 employees and 7 motorhomes and a big office, and we're all over the place, you know, and it started with a road trip, you know. So it's just more about, I think, you know, we interviewed this guy on our road trip, our first road trip. It was Michael Jagger. He's the founder of the first ad agency in Burlington, Vermont that worked with Burton Snowboards. And he said, when you magnify what it is you believe in, the world conspires to support you on your path. And I never forgot that, because it was like, it doesn't matter what it is, as long as you find something that you really, really believe in and you put it out there, like the world will conspire to support you, you know. And that's definitely what happened with us. And, you know, it doesn't mean that it's all easy, you know, like it took us years to generate revenue on the road trips, and we starved along the way and lived off credit cards and didn't make a decent living for a good 4 or 5 years, you know, and had to defer student loans, and, you know, didn't really have I had no one paying for my stuff and all. I mean, it was a lot, you know, and but we made it work, you know, and we always made just enough money to like, we shared a car, you know, we lived at the office. Like I had all my clothes under my desk, you know, like as long as we could pay the office rent, we knew we could like live at the office and sleep on the couch. And, you know, and you can't always do that. Like now I have 2 kids and, you know, family. So it'd be harder to like do that today. But I think whatever your circumstances, you still have to make it work, you know, and it's not easy, but we believe that if you find something you're interested in, you know, over the long run, it will serve you well. So.
Yeah, beautiful. And you brought up a really great point, because the show is to some extent about money and you. And so there's always this money component. And obviously what you do for a living and how you spend your time and all of that. I mean, they're incredibly tied together, obviously. To me, your career choice is just an enormous factor in trying to live a more limit-free life, because you can build that as you describe on your own terms and by your own rules and in your own way. And if you choose to do that, there will be all kinds of money issues that come up. So it's how you handle those and how, you know, sort of your beliefs around money that really play into that. So, you know, you could have easily said at some point, well, we don't really see a way that this is going to make money, you know, we'll have to move on or something. But obviously you didn't. And was that because it was just too exciting a project? I mean, what happens there in your mind?
I think it was working in all the ways except making money. Yeah. You know, we got a book contract with Random House, you know, and actually the book contract gave us enough of a signing bonus up front where we lived on it for, you know, for a good year and a half, you know, and then we had just enough success from an income standpoint to just barely keep going, you know, and there were certainly moments where we're like, oh, almost time to go work at Starbucks. It became very, maybe that was the right way to do it, to be honest. Maybe we should have gotten part-time jobs at Starbucks or something for the healthcare, you know, because it really did, you know, in those early days, you know, there's no right or wrong way to do it, but it definitely took a hit on our, you know, defaulting on student loans and all that stuff. I mean, it was just brutal, you know, so there may have been better, more responsible ways to build a business and with your personal financial shape. So I don't want to give advice on that, but for us, you know, we just went full bore into it, and we got the signing bonus from Random House that lasted a year and a half. We then got a sponsorship from Nike, who sponsored a campus tour for us to kind of screen our road trip film on colleges across the country. Then once that went up, we ended up getting a 3-year sponsorship with State Farm Insurance, which gave us enough revenue to buy 2 more motorhomes and have 3 RVs and expand our footprint to 85 colleges, and then begin our PBS work, and then we were in 10 million households our first year, which then attracted more sponsors of our show. And then we were in 50 million households the next year, and we just kind of went up and up, and then it just kept working, you know. But the first 5 years were just really, really hard and really touch and go. And but again, like we believed in it so much, and we're so committed to it, that we kept going, you know. And I think that's where I feel like, I mean, I personally, and we believe that you should just do something that you really believe in and then find a way to financially make it work, as opposed to the other way around. A lot of people base their careers based on, and a lot of the career guidance tools do this too. The salary calculators, you know, what type of career can I go into that I'm going to make $85,000 starting out of college, or $120,000 starting out of college, or whatever, you know. And then, but the belief and the motivation and the intrinsic, you know, work ethic and grit just isn't there to really be really, really good at it, you know. Or you're just enough good at it and you're kind of faking it to make that $150,000, $200,000 a year, but you're miserable along the way. When, you know, we just believe that the better path is to find something you're interested in, and then try to find as best you can to make the revenue economic model part of it work. And you know what, like, you will most likely find a way, but you may not find a way. And then you try something else, you adapt, you find something else. But if you do that sustained over enough period of time, it'll work, you know. And it worked for Road Trip, you know. And for Road Trip, it's not like a few things didn't work, you know. Like the book thing provided enough income up front to get it going, but it didn't really continue to sustain enough income along the way. And we thought it would, and it didn't. but the sponsorship component, and the licensing of the content to educational entities ended up being the thing that we couldn't have predicted would have been the part to really sustain it. But that's what ended up making the whole thing float, and go, and kind of the flywheel started to go further, So you just don't know. It's like snorkeling, you can kind of like be on the boat looking in the water being like, oh, it looks pretty great down there, but sometimes you just have to jump in the water and look down and then dive down further and get down to all those little caves and crevices and then make decisions based on once you're there, But the main thing is just figuring out what's the right journey to be on.
Right. We're here with Mike Marriner of Roadtrip Nation. And Mike, I have so many questions for you. It's really super hard for me to decide on a question, just like it's hard for people to decide on a career path. I tend to send your information to people of any age. So, and most of my clients, frankly, are a little bit older, but I find it to be perfectly applicable. And kind of in some ways, more things they've never heard. So very interesting. What would you say about that? Is it designed for anyone and everyone, or?
Yeah, we say it's less of a demographic and more of a psychograph. It's more for people at career inflection points. So we did, for example, we did an entire road trip on military veterans. And so we had 3 military veterans on the road. They went across America and interviewed people in different careers who are also returning service members and asked them, how did they transition? We're doing a whole road trip later this year on formerly incarcerated individuals who will go, 3 recently system impact individuals who are going across America interviewing people who were also at one point, system impacted, and to learn how they successfully transitioned to meaningful employment. So, we've done all sorts of road trips that are thematic and topical, acknowledging that everyone deals with different issues in their lives based on where they're coming from. We did a road trip focused on single mothers 2 years ago, which was an incredibly powerful film. Just because you're dealing with certain hurdles or obstacles or lived experiences doesn't mean that you're not also allowed to define your own road in life. However, it's also important to acknowledge the unique hurdles that people are facing and to acknowledge and respect and to specifically ask people who have those same shared lived experiences how they navigated, and I'm not an expert in being a military service member, but I can still help to facilitate a road trip for 3 recently returning veterans, to give them the opportunity to go talk to people who are also returning service members to learn how they got to where they are today, and then create a vertical of content that can be shared through USO centers, So increasingly we're doing more verticalized thematic road trips to make sure that we're really driving our storytelling within shared lived experience that people can really relate with. Because you're right, there's no one size fits all here. Everyone has, and that's where storytelling at scale really matters. Our database is now over 9,000 videos. And so for whatever background you come from or whatever experience you're dealing with, we did a whole collaboration with the former First Lady Michelle Obama based on students who are first in their family to go to college, just as she was. And we had a whole first gen road trip. So that, students from first generation college backgrounds could talk to people who also were the first in their families to go to college about how they transitioned to meaningful careers and got through imposter syndrome and whatnot. So, yeah, you're very right. It's not a one size fits all model, but a lot of the same kind of, frameworks and mindsets still are the same.
Yeah, I think it's such a brilliant way to help people to define their path, because there's a lot of advice out there, but like you say, you're much better off listening to stories and just feeling in your body what is resonating with you, what feels like it might actually work for you in terms of advice. And I think people are turned off by other people's advice a lot for a lot of different reasons. So, it's not advice giving. It's just, illuminating the ways, because we all look at people out there who are doing amazing things and just go, wow, how did that person figure that out? How did, I was fascinated by how you came to do this. And so those stories inspire and they educate and they give people just a, launching off point. It's really, I think, the best possible way to help people to to plan their career paths. I wish there was more done in school along these lines before kids had to make a decision about college or anything, but maybe we'll get there. So what is the, I don't know, is there sort of a plan? Is there a vision ahead for this in terms of how to get the message across to more people or in different ways?
Yeah, we're trying to bring Roadtrip Nation to as many. I mean, people, especially after the pandemic, are hurting. You know, there's certain populations have been disproportionately affected by COVID, and there's a lot of vulnerable individuals who are really having a hard time transitioning to meaningful employment. So we're trying to work really hard and be proactive about bringing, bringing these tools and programs and stories to people who need it the most, especially right now. So we're increasingly working with a lot of local, regional, county workforce investment boards who really target special populations. And we're producing more content on the front end to make sure that we're reflecting those same issues that a lot of those youth are that are in those vulnerable transition points. So we did an opportunity youth road trip last year for students who are either out of school or out of work and who come from really, really tough backgrounds. We're doing a road trip focused on Native American youth this year as well. So that we're gonna have 3 Native American youth living in the RV going across America, interviewing Native American individuals all across the country who successfully transitioned to meaningful career paths. And so we'll have a whole vertical of content for Native youth that work in these county workforce investment boards, the formerly incarcerated road trip. So we're really leaning into that right now, is trying to acknowledging that you can't have a one size fits all storytelling model. You have to really reflect and be sensitive and on the front foot to help people see people like them in careers that represent a more inclusive view of the future of work. It'd be great if there was no stereotypes or stigmas in the future workforce, but there just is, and there are a lot of pathways that don't feel openly accessible to all people. And so what we can do is our role as an organization is to, be thoughtful and intentional with our storytelling to make sure that we are driving a more inclusive view through our storytelling, so that then when youth and people at career transition points are viewing our content, they see examples of people like them in the content, Right. So that's really where we're leaning into it really aggressively, is really making sure our database reflects a more inclusive view of the future of work, and then trying to share that out with as many people as possible, increasingly through schools, workforce boards, state governments. People are really understanding that the workforce, career guidance landscape needs a refresh. People kind of get it. I think that COVID and the pandemic was like, oh, that's right. Like, everything's virtual, and it's not just about downloadable PDFs. Like, it has to be dynamic, engaging, video-based, media-based, story-based, to your point. And people are really rethinking the quality of their digital experiences, at a pretty large level. So I think it's a good time to be a provider to help infuse and invigorate and get it to people who really need it right now. So we're trying to double down on the storytelling side, making sure we have that representation, both from a career standpoint and a shared lived experience standpoint, and doubling down on our distribution to make sure we're getting it out there to as many people as possible. So
that's fabulous. I love the all those upcoming ideas for programming. That's so great. So I have a kind of an odd question, but given that you were a biology major, this is something that comes up a lot with me and clients who are telling me how sick they feel in their job, and that sense of dread that's more of a physical feeling than anything, and yet what they do makes so much sense. And because of maybe the noise that they heard earlier in life, everything on paper looks so good, but they just feel awful. And so I always kind of try to inform them that those feelings are meaningful. Like, if you feel sick every day that you go to work, there's probably a reason to think about changing jobs, no matter how great the job is. Do you have any thoughts on that, just given your understanding of that?
Yeah, I mean, I have a science background, but I think the one thing I learned in studying science for so many years is that there's so much that scientists don't know. It's like the deeper you get into science, the more you realize, like, oh man, everyone's kind of guessing here. And I personally believe that the science of just like, I don't know, just reflecting I mean, we know that like high stress environments, cortisol gets secreted into your bloodstream. Cortisol is like the fight or flight thing. It's, it makes your bloodstream, more acidic, less basic. It just you eat your body away. There's all these autoimmune diseases popping up all over the place. Like, people's work and the degree to which people hate their work is it worth your life and your health? And you have to find a way to provide for your family, and that's a very real thing. And there are different ways to do it, and it's complicated. It takes putting puzzle pieces together. Different people have different people they're responsible for. Like if I was to start a company today, I'd have to do it much more carefully, because I have 2 little kids.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I agree, and a lot of it too is just self-care. I think we all saw that in the pandemic too. I mean, there just because I started Roadtrip Nation and I'm proud of my path doesn't mean that I don't have days where I'm waking up and
Yeah.
freaking out. And, I mean, it looks so great on the outside, but it's also really intense, just like I'm sure your path too,
Right.
So I think it's also about self-care and breathing and drinking water and staying hydrated and just like taking care of yourself and taking care of your mental state and self-talk and all of that stuff. It's all
Yeah.
There's no silver bullet. It's just finding, building a life that has all of those things balanced. But yeah, work is a really important part of it. It's a really important part of well-being, and all the research shows that. And you spend so much time working too,
Yeah.
is that you might as well have it be driving something you really, really believe in, and maybe there's a way to make it a hybrid, I mean, that's, you don't need to think about work as this full-blown full-time thing. Maybe it's a part-time thing to help pay the bills, and then you do something else on the weekends or as part of a charity side to like, there's ways of piecing it. There is no 100% perfect path where you're full on bliss mode. Maybe there is. I don't know if there is, but even myself, like, I'm really proud of my path. It's my life's work and it's super stressful, and so I still need to work on self-care and breathing and all that. But at the end of the day, I feel really good. I sleep really good at night. I know what I'm doing is making a difference in the world, and but it's still intense, so it's just a little bit of everything, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that, because you do look super calm and like you would never be stressed out. But I'm glad that you brought that up, because it is true. No matter how purposeful and meaningful and important, you feel your work is, and how gratifying it is, and how much you even enjoy it, how fun it is. I mean, there's all sides to everything. So no point in pretending there's not. but you definitely know, I think, when you're on a path that feels like there's enough purpose and there's enough of a good reason to be doing it, and it's working for you. I guess what I was getting at too is just, there's this balance between kind of the rational, practical side of things, and then, how you feel. And so, sometimes people just want to have more fun at work, and I feel like that's okay. That's not a strange request, really, from your work. So I think it's and I love everything that the book talks about, because it's really my feeling too, that it's about knowing who you are and what you want. And those questions they seem like they should be so simple, and they're so complicated. So yeah, well, thank you, Mike. I am super thrilled that you were here, and I love what you're doing, and I will continue to share the information as much as I can. I think Roadtrip Nation is one of the coolest organizations out there. Thank you for getting it going. Thank you for going on the road trip and bringing it to everyone. And it sounds like you have amazing future plans, which everyone should be following. So
thank you. Great. Thanks for listening, and thanks for all that you do too. So
thank you. Yeah, loved having you on the show. Appreciate it.
Likewise.
Okay.
All right.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, listeners, I hope that you will go and check out Roadtrip Nation. You can learn from Roadtrip Nation in any way you prefer. There's videos, there's books, there's audio. So there is so much content, and honestly, I do find it so empowering and so inspiring, and I know you will too. It's hard not to. So I think for today's Tough Love Money Tip, what I'm going to ask you to do, and I hope you are paying attention to these because they are really helpful. They're designed by me to get you where you want to go. So I thought about this, and I thought, are you constructing your career? Is your career just happening and you're not really loving it, but you have one, so you're thankful? Or are you actually designing it, constructing it yourself? I love what the Roadtrip Nation has to say about letting go of the noise, defining, and then becoming something. Whatever you put your mind to might be right for now, might be right forever. We don't know when we go into it, but that's okay, because that's how you evolve and grow and learn. So what can you do right now to just evaluate? Are you constructing your career? And if you had to describe it, I thought, okay, if I had to put a little exercise around this, I would say describe your career with 20 adjectives right now. And it might be hard to get to 20. That's why I picked 20, because I think you could probably come up with 5, 10 pretty quickly. After that, it starts getting a little trickier. So 20 adjectives that would describe how you feel about your career right now. And just see where that leads you. Would you say, after you look at those words, that it's something you want to keep going with, or something that maybe could be better? So that's your money tip for today, because, of course, how you earn money is key to your relationship with money. So thanks so much for being here, and love having you here. You can find me at limitfreelife.com. I have a new career change kit on my website that is free, and it's quite comprehensive. So if you are thinking about a career change, there's some work on how to get more clear with what you would like to do, who you'd like to be. And then there's a whole lot of information on the practical side of the job search, from resumes to LinkedIn to interviewing to networking, you name it. So it's a really comprehensive overview. If you're thinking about a career change or you are in career transition, check that out. It's my career change kit. You can find it at limitfreelife.com. Love to see you and, have you be on this, listening to the show. So please remember to subscribe on Apple Music or Spotify or wherever you listen to the show. We're here Monday nights at 7 on ubngo.com, streaming, and then all the other podcast platforms. So see you next week. Thanks so much.